Hi, it's Paul Merriman here from AskPaul.ie. Today I'm going to be sitting down with Darragh talking about his first time buyer journey and talking about all the excellent government schemes that are available to help. Okay, so Darragh, I believe you're thinking about trying to get on the property ladder and currently renting. Why don't you bring me through your own circumstances and we have a chat about what's available scheme-wise?
Yeah, so I'm currently looking at various different options to see how I can get on the property ladder. At the moment I'm trying to get a deposit together, so I'm one of those people now that has decided to move home and to visit the empty nesters again.
Very good.
To try and put a bit of cash
They
together.
probably miss you anyway.
So that's the current state of affairs at the moment. So what I'd like to hear from you, Paul, is what are the options available? I know there's various different schemes available, to first-time buyers. So first off, I've heard a lot about the Help to Buy scheme, so how does that apply?
The Help to Buy scheme is probably the biggest one for first-time buyers, but it is limited to, new properties, so new builds or self-builds, in fairness. It's great, €30,000 tax package was paid over the last 4 years. You apply on the revenue.ie/help to buy. It's a very straightforward process. Yourself and your partner can go in and see what you qualify for. It's a max of 30,000 between the both of you, okay?
Is it 30%? Is it 30,000 or 10%?
No, it's 30,000 maximum up to 10% of the value of the house. But what the revenue.ie site will do is qualify you up to €30,000.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to buy a property and that property is say €280,000, you can only use 28 grand of the 30,000 approval towards the property.
Right. And if the house was above 500,000, then
it don't qualify at all.
Okay.
So it's up to 500,000 and any of that.
And are there any other limitations on the scheme in relation to your personal circumstances, such as income thresholds? Or?
Yeah, no, 70% or higher. So you want to be borrowing up and around over €350,000. So if you wanted to borrow €300,000, you'd have a threshold below the 70%, and you wouldn't qualify for the scheme. So that's important to keep in mind as well.
And in relation to the upper limit, then the 500,000. Is that the value of the mortgage or the value of the property?
Value of the property, great question. Yeah, value of the property, so it's €500,000 it's cut off it.
And anything else in relation to a new build then?
No, nothing else really. I mean, you won't qualify for, there's no other schemes you can qualify for other than maybe from a deposit point of view. Now, if you were struggling with the mortgage, but again, looking at incomes level, you probably won't, but you could maybe avail of the first home scheme, which is the equity scheme that the government to bring in. Again, if you're using the Help to Buy based on the income levels, you're going to qualify for the mortgage, the Help to Buy. You're sorted. But if you were struggling, or somebody out there was struggling to get the cash together or the mortgage, they can use the equity scheme from the government, the first home scheme.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But before that, can you just talk about the Help to Buy and how that applies to a new build? Is there anything different?
There's no difference. No, I mean,
to a self-build.
Yeah, there's no difference at all. So basically, when you're going from a building point of view, you apply for the Help to Buy scheme. You get the certificate off the government of the revenue.ie. They give you the certificate to say you're approved for the €30,000. It goes to solicitor and it's drawn down when you're actually paying the deposit or buying the property off the builder. It doesn't go into your bank account. It goes to solicitor and it's used when you're acquiring the property. In a self-build situation, it comes when you're actually drawing down the first piece of the mortgage. Okay, so again, it goes to the solicitor. On a self-build, how they work from a mortgage point of view is you get its stage payments. So the mortgage company, let's say you're borrowing €600,000 or €500,000. In that case, you're going to have a situation where they might say, we're going to give you $100,000 the first tranche or a few €100,000 on the build. And what the bank will be looking for there is they're going to look for a architect or quantity surveyors to be certified the house is built correctly along the way. Yeah. And when you draw down that first tranche, that's when the Help to Buy kicks in when you're looking for a self-build.
And you get the whole.
You get the whole upfront of the €30,000. It was the maximum of €30,000.
And are there any other limitations in relation to the value of the property, or is
there
it
will be? So make sure it's the same €500,000. Big thing that catches people is the value of the land and the site and the property built. Value of the land, the site value, and the property after the purchase price, which you're looking for in the valuation.
So, for example, if you had a site from your parents and you built a house and the build cost was $300,000, but the value maybe at the end of it brought it up to about $510,000.
If it brought it up over €500,000, you'd be disqualified. Yeah, but don't forget, in fairness to the scheme, how it works is when you're applying. So if there is a price movement or something happens, you'll be fine. So it's actually that you qualify on the information you have when you're applying for the scheme.
Well, I was asking about the value for the self-build. So how is that determined? So the value that's a bit granular now.
Yeah, that's right. So the value of the self-build is going to be based on an auctioneer. So the auctioneer will have a look at the site, the value of the site, and then value what's going to be on the site afterwards. So on the site afterwards, 4-bed, 3-bed, semi-D, whatever it's going to be. New build is probably going to be detached, to be fair. So yeah, they'll value that, give you the valuation, and that's all you need.
Very good. And now, can you tell me about the shared equity scheme or the first home scheme? How does that work?
So the first home scheme is where the government basically take a stake in the property with you and equity in the property with you if you need it. So let's say you had a mortgage approval for a property of €300,000 and you wanted to buy something for 350. It's where the government will actually give you that €50,000, and that €50,000 is not actually a second mortgage. So let's think of it as the bank of mum or dad. The €50,000 comes in to go towards the deal. You owe the government that €50,000 back. And you have to pay them at some stage, and obviously that 50,000 will grow with the percentage of the value of the property. So if you're 300,
so explain that to me then. So
say your 350,000 property goes to €700,000 in 20 odd years. That 50,000 is now 100,000 you owe the rent because they have a stake in the equity.
Oh, very
good.
So it's a percentage stake.
It's a percentage stake, yeah. It's a percentage stake, yes.
And there's no interest on it then as a result.
There's no interest for the first 5 years, and they have what's called a management fee, and that kicks in after year 5, and it increases throughout the years, and it caps out at year 16. To be fair, it's a really, really small fee. It's not a second mortgage. That scheme was launched. There was a lot of negative press in it, saying people are going to have two mortgages. The government's trying to sell them two mortgages. That's not what the scheme is for. It's not what it is. It's not interest. It's simple interest. It's not compounding interest. To be fair, it's pittance. It's like the bank or mum and dad, and your mum and dad charge you a couple of quid on an annual basis. That's what you have to think of it as.
Yeah, so you're insulated from interest rates.
100%. And actually, in fairness, it's a really good point because, for someone that qualifies for the first home scheme, with interest rates going the way they are, a massive increase in interest rates over the last 18 months, you're actually insulating yourself by taking the first home scheme. So I would really recommend people use it where they can. The other thing is you can pay it back at any stage. So say you buy the €50,000 and you get a bonus from work or a windfall or inheritance or something comes your way, you can choose to pay it off, and there's no penalties for doing that either.
But you're effectively buying the equity off the government.
You're buying the equity back, yeah. And again, you don't have to do it until you sell the property or until you pass away, maybe. So again, it's a really good support. And I think why I liked it so much was that sometimes in the press over the last number of years, when people have got support from family members, whether it's their parents, it's kind of, people say it's unfair that some people that can get the support of bank or mum and dad, and some people can't. So the government basically stepped in here, and it's also brilliant for single people. But yeah, in that case, it's really good because single people find it obviously way more difficult to get a mortgage because only one application, one person saving, one income. The government are jumping in here, to provide the equity as well.
And is there any limit on the equity stake?
No, there's no limit. Sorry, the government will have a 20% limit on it, but it's a calculation based on the overall mortgage and income what you're looking for.
Very good. And what are the criteria for applying for that scheme?
It's actually very, very simple. You have to get your mortgage approval first. So you go to a bank. It's Permanent TSB, Bank of Ireland, AIB, and EBS are part of the AIB group, so you can go to either of them. You get your mortgage approval, and then you go into the first home scheme. It's a very simple application. You get your application, they give you the equity piece, it goes to the solicitors again on drawdown. But it's very important you don't apply for that scheme. So to help to buy, you kind of go and you get the help to buy now. You can, if you're even thinking of buying next year, you can find out what you qualify and get your cert. But the first home scheme you qualify for, you apply for rather after you get your mortgage approval. So it's important to get the mortgage piece first, then apply for that.
Okay, very good. Okay, so in relation to if you were buying, say, an older house, I believe there's the vacant home scheme and the derelict home scheme. So
so they're very, very good schemes. So again, we're out in source today. If you found a derelict or a vacant house, you apply for it through the local authority. For a vacant, you're going to get up to €50,000 towards renovation work. From a derelict, and what's 70,000.
So then, Paul, can you tell me what is a vacant property then under
a
the
vacant
scheme?
property just needs to be vacant for 2 years and it qualifies, and then from the derelict you don't have a time frame. It has to be certified as derelict. So once certified from derelict, you're going to qualify. The vacant is up to 50,000, the derelict is up to €70,000, and then both you can put on the SCA grants up on top of that, which is up to €30,000. And 30, in fairness, most places that are going to be derelict or vacant, you're probably going to be upgrading enough to bring up the energy rating and to qualify for those SCA grants.
And have you experienced with people kind of using contractors who will be, who will assist them in getting both the SCA?
Oh yeah, they will. But they would. But they have to qualify through the SCA. The SCA grants will have their approved providers as well. And most building contractors in today's world that will be going through those types of property transformations will be up to speed with the SCA grants and applying from. Very important that people around this scheme, they think they can qualify for the €50,000 before they carry out the work. So this is important if you're going for a mortgage application as well. If you're going for a vacant or a derelict, you need to be able to show the bank, number one, you're going to have the same rules around the deposits as a first time buyer, okay? That's very important. But number two, the bank will also require you, especially on a derelict, to make sure that you have enough cash flow should it overrun. So it's like a self-build nearly. So on a self-build and a derelict, let's say you're looking to build a property and a renovation cost or a new build cost of 300,000, the bank will always want to see 10% on top of that as a contingency, because the last thing you want to do
or they're
is
only going to give you 90% in other words.
Yeah, they don't want to see you run out of cash flow and a house with no roof on it. It's not worth anything to the bank then again, or they have to finish it. The other thing for people to be aware of, there will be the local authority loan. This was previously the rebuilding or home loan. It's been out quite a considerable amount of time, one of the first schemes the government brought into place. So what this will allow people to do is, if you have up to 70,000 as a single income or up to 85,000 as a dual income, you're able to apply for it. You're going to get slightly more than the banks will give you. The idea is they'll give you more than 4 times, but the interest rates still. Now you have to have, like I said, for your case, from an income point of view, it's under 85 for a joint income, but the interest rates are generally under 3%, and they're fixed for the term of the mortgage, and they're able to go on to first new builds or else second-hand properties as well. So it's really, really, really good. There are certain caps in relation to the values of the properties, but I think that's a really good scheme for people as well, especially with interest rates rising so quickly.
Yeah, I remember people used to talk about, I remember my parents talking about a council mortgage, I think was available in the 80s, so it's effectively the same.
Yeah, it's not far off what it is. And again, the derelict provision, the vacant provision, and the local authority loan, they're all applied through the local authority. If you are someone that's thinking of buying a property in 2 or 3 different areas, you do have to apply through 3 of those separate local authorities as well.
And are there any of those schemes that you've mentioned, are there barriers if you use one that you can't use the other? Or
no, actually there's not. You can start the local authority loan, can go in on top of players that help the buy if you're buying a new build. So the main thing you give is new build or second-hand property. New build, you're going to get the help to buy. You can use the local authority loan, or you could also use the shared equity scheme. And you can't use the shared equity scheme along with the likes of the local authority loan, but you can use it with the help to buy. And then
for a used property then?
For a used property or second-hand property, it's really just down to the local authority loan. That's the main scheme that's going to help.
You get shared equity as well, can't you?
From a shared equity point of view, in certain cases, if it's a case where the tenant is in place and they're buying the property off the landlord, you will be able to use it, but you can't use the shared equity for typical. If you're going to buy a second-hand property, you can't use the shared equity. It's only
and then if you're using the vacant or derelict scheme, you can only use the SEIA grant on top of that. None of the other schemes.
So because the help to buy really is that 50 to 70,000 euro there,
And then, Paul, from all your experience, what advice would you give to me?
Why I'm so interested in all these schemes and helping people is that you really need a financial plan to go around everything. So whether it's a self-build, new build, derelict, vacant, whether it's your first-time buyer, or even for people watching this video that might be moving property, you need to plan as soon as possible. The last thing you want to do is go through the mortgage process, think you just buy a derelict house, and then you don't have that contingency plan in place, for argument's sake. So it is very important to sit down with somebody as soon as possible and put the financial plan around whatever you're thinking of. In my opinion, interest rates are going to increase more over the next 12 to 18 months. I don't think you're going to see them ever at 0% again. And although interest rates do rise and decrease, I don't feel that they're going to come down much lower than they are at today's term. And just for context, we're in August 2023. For someone watching this video back, I don't think you're going to see it much lower than they are today. Darragh, it's been lovely chatting to you. Best of luck on the house buying journey.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you.